You already bought 10 packages of Sculpey 3, and after conditioning it for 5 seconds, you realize you've made a terrible mistake. And now you want to claw your eyes out. Yes, compared to other brands, Sculpey 3 is kind of the worst thing ever. It's way too soft to sculpt with, it's fragile after baking, and now you're stuck with it. But don't worry, I won't leave you like this. Here are a few ways to make Sculpey 3 not as awful. If you don't mind the soft consistency of this raw clay, but you hate how brittle it becomes, the quickest way to make Sculpey 3 stronger is to bake it at a higher temperature than the instructions say to. Personally, instead of baking at 275 degrees Fahrenheit, I bake it at 300 degrees. Those 25 degrees are enough to make a big difference in how durable the final piece is. The clay might get a bit darker in color, but it won't burn or release any dangerous fumes, and it's completely safe to do. However, polymer clay does burn around 350 degrees Fahrenheit, so just make sure you stay below that temperature. And also keep in mind, the higher you set your temperature, the darker your clay will get. And to be on the safe side, I also recommend tenting your clay if you don't already, because this slight change in temperature could be enough to scorch your polymer clay. And it was in my case. If you want to learn about tenting and a bunch of other clay tips, I have a video of mine that I will link. If you can't stand how soft Sculpey 3 is, you can leach the clay to make it easier to sculpt with. Leaching is a process that removes some of the plasticizer from the clay, and it helps make it more firm. To do this, take a piece of blank paper, then flatten your clay and place it in the center. Place another sheet of paper on top of the clay, or fold the paper onto itself if you have enough room. Make sure not to use lined paper or any other kind of paper that has ink on it because it will transfer onto your clay. Then flatten the whole thing as much as you can. The thinner you can get the clay, the better this will work. After that, leave this to sit for a few hours or overnight. The longer you leave it, the firmer your clay will become. If you don't want to wait that long, it can sometimes help to put something heavy on top of it, like a stack of books. But you'll still have to be patient and give it some time. During this process, the paper will absorb some of the liquids from the clay. And afterwards, you can remove the clay from the paper, condition it like normal, and start sculpting. If the clay is still too soft, you can leach it for a bit longer. But at this point, the used paper is already saturated with plasticizer and it won't pull any more out of the clay. So you'll want to use some fresh paper. Sometimes if you leach clay for too long, it gets dry and crumbly. To improve the texture, you can add a little bit of liquid clay or some unleached clay to soften it up. Leaching improves the consistency of the raw clay, and the clay bakes the normal color it would without leaching, but it doesn't make it any stronger after baking. Now to make Sculpey 3 easier to sculpt with and stronger after baking, combine it with a clay that is more firm. The exact ratio isn't super important as long as you use more firm clay than Sculpey 3. And I recommend using one of Sculpey's other clay lines for this because they all bake at the exact same temperature. But you don't have to use Sculpey if you don't want to. Personally, I always use Sculpey Primo for this because it's strong and the raw consistency is easy to sculpt with. And I use translucent clay so that the Sculpey 3 color remains almost exactly the same. But again, you do not have to use translucent. If you do care about preserving the color, here is an after baking comparison between the translucent mix and regular Sculpey 3. And the clay will be significantly stronger than Sculpey 3 on its own. If you don't mind coating your sculptures, a really great way to make the clay strong after baking is to cover it with UV resin. Just sculpt like normal, then bake your piece. After it cools, coat it with a thin layer of resin, then cure with a UV light. You can sculpt with soft Sculpey 3, but it can be even better to do it with leached clay because it will be easier to sculpt with, and then the UV resin will hold everything together so you don't have to worry about it breaking. I was trying as hard as I could to bend this piece and I genuinely couldn't. But I also have weak hands, so I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. Okay, this last option is a little bit of a cop-out, but instead of trying to make Sculpey 3 firmer, I usually just make it even softer and turn it into clay icing. All you have to do is mix your clay with some liquid clay. And you don't have to use this mixture as icing. It can be sauce, it can be melted cheese. The options are endless. There you go, 5 different methods. That helps a little bit, right? And hey, if you don't like any of those options, you can always just shove Sculpey 3 in a drawer and forget you ever bought it. I did for many years. It's very effective. Okay, goodbye.